Susan was looking through old papers and documents in her family home that was standing for over 300 years. She didn't remember her parents that much because they were killed in a freak accident in their garden. She didn't know the details. She had photos of them, and that is all she remembered. She was reading through different documents when she came to a certain one that grabbed her attention instantly. It read, "I put the treasure in the garden for safekeeping." It was signed by her mom. She noticed the date in the diary entry was exactly the same day her mom had her accident. She wondered, was she murdered for the treasure? This kept bothering Susan more and more. When she was out walking, she kept thinking, were her parents murdered for whatever was buried in her garden? She thought all through the years that her parents were in some sort of freak accident, and now she is worried that it was plain, old-fashioned murder. A week later, she had enough of wondering and just had to go out to the garden to dig up the treasure. There was a page that had the exact position of the garden where it would be. She had a pitchfork and shovel and dug until eventually she hit a hard piece of what she guessed was wood. Sure enough, it was a chest, and when she opened it, she smiled, seeing that it was full of what looked like priceless gold and jewels. She came across photos that made her nearly get sick, as there were photos of her parents and what she guessed were her grandparents, with some sort of spike in their eye. She suddenly heard a noise, and her leg slipped, and she fell on the fork, which gouged right into her eye. She screamed, realizing that the spikes in the fork were what were in her parents' and grandparents' eyes. She fell into the hole and screamed when she saw what looked like a white ghost hovering over her, and within seconds she realized there were bones near her, and seconds later she was buried alive. The spirit was of Mason Jeffers, the estranged son who was cut out of his inheritance over 250 years ago. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Brenda and Tony were driving along the countryside on a December night. They were on a road trip for 2 weeks as a part of unwinding from a lot of hard work doing up their new house. The plan was to stay in several motels along the way and enjoy the road trip and eating out in diners and enjoying the scenery in between. It was just about getting dark when Brenda was surprised to see a hitchhiker on the road. She said to Tony, "Do you see that?" Tony said, "Yeah, I wonder who is it, way out here." The couple decided to stop, and the hitchhiker said, "Hi there, my name is Paul. I would really love if you could give me a drive just a few miles up the road to the next motel, please. I took the wrong bus and I'm walking miles." Tony said, "Sure, hop in the back." The man's name was Peter. When he was in the back, he began to speak. "I was sure happy to see you guys come along. I must have been walking for miles. I was about to drop unconscious with tiredness from all the walking, and believe me, I'm not fit enough to walk that long. But ye guys, where are ye from? Let me guess. The big city, or maybe you're from the suburbs. Maybe you're the type of people that look down on folk like me. Brenda and Tony found that comment to be strange. Tony said, "Excuse me? Why would we look down on you?" Peter suddenly pulled out a gun and pointed it to Brenda's head and said, "I'll tell you why you look down on me, because I've a gun held to your girlfriend, or is it your wife's head, and you're probably saying to yourself, I'm crazy." Tony said in a voice filled with fear and shock, "What the hell, man? Put away that gun." Peter said, "I do the talking around here, now keep driving." Brenda began to feel around her pocket for her phone and pretended to sneeze, to look down and press 911. When she did, she kept the phone on, hoping it would be traced. Tony said, "Look man, I don't know what's going on, okay? But I know that we did nothing to you, so please just put the gun away." Suddenly Peter shouted, "Stop the damn car." Brenda shouted, "Please, no, please stop, just leave us alone." When the car stopped, Peter shot Tony in the back of his head and he died instantly. The hitchhiker shouted to Brenda, "You're lucky I'm not going to kill you, bitch," and he ran out of the car. Brenda picked the phone up and said to the 911 operator, "Please help me, please, my husband has just been killed by some guy we picked up." 10 minutes later, the police arrived and took a statement from Brenda. Brenda was sitting inside her home that herself and Tony had recently refurbished. There was a noise at the door and a figure walked into the room. She could see that it was Peter the hitchhiker. He pulled out a gun and pointed at her. Then he smiled and said, "Bang, bang." She smiled back at him and said, "I have your money and thanks for taking this job. He actually was cheating on me all the while we were doing up our new home." Peter said, "I actually must give you credit for this idea and coming up with the 911 call, etc. But as much as I'd love to stay around for tea, I need to get going, because if your police or neighbours see me, then who knows, tongues might start wagging and they might ask questions." Brenda asked, "What do you mean? How will they trace you to all this? They never even saw your face." Peter said, "I know, but I still have to tie up loose ends." Brenda said, "What do you mean?" Peter said, "Don't worry, it will be over soon." He lifted the gun and shot Brenda in her head. Then he walked into her bedroom and opened up her safe with her own finger he cut off just a minute ago. He was going to just go ahead and murder her husband for $100,000, but she had too much a big mouth and told him about a safe full of diamonds that only her fingerprint would open. He smiled when he looked at all the diamonds. Then suddenly he heard a ticking sound. He wondered what it was. He looked around the room to see. Suddenly all the doors and windows locked. He assumed it was some sort of alarm from the safe being opened at a time that wasn't scheduled. He heard the ticking get louder as he looked under the bed and saw that it was a bomb. From the timer he saw that it would detonate in 10 minutes. For the next 10 minutes he looked around for a way out of the house, but when the 10th minute came, he exploded with the house. I asked my love to take a walk, just a little walk, down beside where the waters flow, down by the banks of the Ohio. He sang it so softly, the melody barely seemed to leave his lips. His voice was beautiful, hauntingly so. He held her hand as they lay next to the stream, and he sang for her, and only say that you'll be mine, in no other's arms intertwine. So soft his voice was, almost as though he was whispering. Well, he needn't worry that anyone else would hear him sing. The song was, after all, for her, so he didn't need to belt out the tune. He turned and looked at her. He was overcome with a rush of warmth people call love. With his free hand he gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. She had a faint smile on her face. It was almost a neutral look, and he continued to sing, down beside where the waters flow, down by the banks of the Ohio. He got up, leaving her to lie, and listened to the melodic rush of the stream, the bright hot sun gleaming down on God's good earth, the green grass beneath their picnic blanket rustling gently in the breeze. It was scenic, a simple, delicate daisy, just one. He had no need for a bunch. He walked with it gently. He had always been a gentle person. It reflected in his singing, with the way it was so quiet. If you asked anyone about him, they'd tell you he'd never hurt a fly. They say love is like a flower, you must nurture it and let it grow. She was his flower, his love, his delicate little daisy. They also say you should not pick the flower and put it in a vase for display, as it will soon wither and die. Rather let the flower be, and let it be beautiful in the wilderness. That is what he intended for her. He would never pluck her and let the world see her beauty. She was his flower, and he wanted to grow and nurture her. He arrived back at the stream. A bird far off in the distance let out a shriek. Something must have frightened it. He hadn't wandered far from the stream, and once back next to her, he lay down, daisy in hand, head on the grass, breathing in her scent deeply as he lay next to her. Just as the flower in his hand had a beautiful smell, so did she. He placed the flower in her hair, further beautifying her, a flower for his flower. He looked towards the bright sun and squinted. Such a lovely day. The stream continued to flow steadily. He gazed at her with nothing but love. Unfortunately, the love he had for her was unrequited. Well, it didn't matter. He loved her enough for the both of them. He threw the knife into the river as he got up and walked away, leaving her there in all her beauty, flower in hair, young and beautiful, pale skin due to loss of blood flow, but still beautiful. He sang the last bit of the song as he walked away. I held a knife against her breast, as into my arms she pressed. She cried, good God, don't you murder me. I'm not prepared for eternity. I wandered home 'tween 12 and 1. I cried, my God, what have I done? I've killed the only girl I love, for she would not want to be my bride, and only say that you'll be mine, and in no other's arms intertwine. Down beside where the waters flow, down by the banks of the Ohio. If he couldn't have her in life, he'll have her in death. It was a secluded piece of the river. He could come visit her any time he'd like. He'd never have to fear losing her to anyone. She was his forever. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you enjoy the content, then make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of new content.